I'm JD Mosley-Matchett. I am currently a senior assessment developer for Western Governors University, but I've had a very long career in education, more than 30 years, worked my way up from professor to full professor to dean to vice president of academic affairs. For a while, I was an interim president, and then I went over to the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, where I was the director of university accreditation and assessment systems management. So I have spent quite a long period of time in higher education, but along the way, I also started a company called Informaven. And that's how Yarrick and I have developed a relationship because I invited him onto my podcast to talk about AI and higher education, and then he reciprocated. So here I am to talk about something that is close to my heart, how our universities and colleges are reacting to this new technological situation of AI. And I know that that gives a lot of different people a lot of different emotions, but hopefully we can fit them into the framework that I've developed. And as you can see from the title of the talk, buggy whips, rocket ships, or total eclipse, because that seems to be the three areas that everyone seems to run to, at least mentally, when they think about AI and higher education. So let's uh, let's start with the first question, if that's okay.
Right on.
Thank you, sir. All right, framing the three narratives. What the heck do I mean by, buggy whips and rocket ships? Well, let's start with buggy whips. Everyone thinks of buggy whips as being old technology, kick it to the curb, not something that anybody needs any longer, things that are old-fashioned. And I would I would say that when we talk about things being old-fashioned or out of date, we also seem to think in terms of nostalgia and looking at them as the good old days, something that's familiar. And things that are familiar we consider safe. So if we look at higher education as a familiar place, someplace that's safe, something that we have developed over time, and the way we do it is the right way. When we get an interloper coming in like AI that disrupts all of that familiarity, it seems dangerous. And it is to a degree, because when we think of technology changing things, I like to think back to the trades and the guilds that were there for the craftsmen. Those guilds fell away because of the technology of manufacturing. Craftsmen put love into the things that they created. But manufacturing doesn't have time for the individuals who are operating in it to devote the same level of love and care and attention to detail. That gets automated out to a degree that for a while we were looking at factories as places that suck the soul out of individuals. Why would anyone ever want to do the same thing over and over and over again? And now with education, we're sort of looking at the same sort of thing. For years, no, for centuries, we were dealing with the sage on the stage, the intellect at the front of the room, and the people who needed their intellectual cups filled, sitting at their feet and collecting the knowledge that they were issuing forth. But now, if knowledge is something that we can get at a click of a key, whether we're talking about AI or the internet or YouTube, that puts the whole sage on the stage situation into jeopardy. Once again, what's familiar feels safe, and what's new feels like a threat. So, this notion of the institution as a buggy whip really does kind of fit in with this notion of we don't want this new technology, we want to stick with what we're accustomed to. However, if you look up buggy whips these days, modern buggy whips are very, very different from buggy whips from the 18th century. Now they have LED lights. They're made of fiberglass. They're considered safety and visibility products rather than something that's utilitarian. So, in a way, buggy whips are really kind of more exciting now than they were back in the good old days. And I think that AI is going to do the same sort of thing to the buggy whip mentality that we have in some degree in different higher education institutions. Okay, so let me move on to this notion of rocket ships. Okay, by rocket ships, I mean that universities are also looked at as a kind of a fast track to higher pay or a better life for individuals. So families would scrimp and save to be able to send their children off to college so that they could have a better life than their parents. And that brings us to a very old debate that I remember my professors having when I was in my PhD program. Is the student the customer or the product? If you look at the student as the product, then the sage on the stage makes a lot of sense because we are pouring our knowledge into these vessels who are students, and they become the product that we send out into the world to make the world a better place. However, the cost of college is breathtaking at this point in time. And because of that cost factor and the increased level of sacrifice that's involved in getting students all the way through their college degree, very often the student rightly feels as though they should be the customer. They're paying for this, and therefore, if they're paying for a service, they should have an end result at the end. Unfortunately, that has resulted in grade inflation to a degree because students are willing to push back if they don't get the grade they believe they deserve. And that was something that would never happen when I was in school anyway. It also degrades confidence in what the degree represents. Because if we are allowing the students to be the customer and to have more of a say in what their education should be, then can we really count on a degree representing a high level of achievement? If everybody gets an A, what does an A mean? So it's a two-edged sword when we talk about colleges being a fast track to higher pay. Because in one sense, yes, we want to make it a level playing field for everyone, but at the same time, if everyone that we're turning out has the same abilities, and we don't really differentiate as much as we used to with respect to who did really well and who just kind of squeaked by, that creates a situation for employers where they can't really count on the fact that a student has a college degree translating into a high level of competency. So, one of the things that I noticed yesterday, I was in a webinar about higher education demographics that was conducted by Gray DI. Bob Atkins was the moderator for that. And well, the presenter for that, and he noted that most college graduates become managers. And that's great, but not everyone needs to be a manager. And not every position that's out there needs to be a managerial position. So if we're cranking out a lot of managers, at some point in time, we need to really focus on who are they managing and how big can this middle management sphere become? So I believe that it's going to be a pendulum swing when we talk about colleges being a fast track to a higher paying job. There are lots of jobs that are out there that aren't managerial in nature and require high levels of skill. And if that can be delivered without the sage on the stage, maybe we need to start rethinking that concept of higher education. And finally, there's the total eclipse. Oh my gosh, AI is going to wipe out colleges because if you can just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, teach me about such and such, why do we have to send our kids to school? Well, first of all, rich people are not going to stop sending their kids to college for multiple reasons. First of all, it's a rite of passage and they are not going to let go of that rite of passage. And secondly, the networking opportunities. A lot of what goes on, particularly in the higher leagues, higher sorry, in the Ivy leagues, is this notion of meeting people that are going to be able to help you in your career in the future. That's not something you're going to get by having a conversation with ChatGPT. However, the rising cost of college and the current political situation where we're seeing resistance to continuing to pay or help people pay for the rising cost of college is going to make it harder for people with limited resources to obtain degrees in the future. And to be honest, that plays into some discussion points that I want to have on some of the next few slides. So I'm going to put a pin in this notion that AI is going to blow up higher education. It's not going to blow up higher education, but there are going to be changes that will have to happen. And they're not going to be comfortable and they're not going to be easy. Okay, so hopefully I explained what those three narratives are. Any questions that we need to ask before we move on? Okay, then let's push on to the next.
Sorry, I do
Oh,
have a follow-up question if you don't
okay,
mind.
great. Yes, please.
You mentioned that, especially when we were talking about the buggy whips part, right? That it seems like
Hmm.
you're absolutely right that those whips look quite differently now when they used to before. The bottom line, however, is that we are all of a sudden being stretched or fused, merged with this murky area of student agency. That all of a sudden, it's not, you mentioned it more than once, it's not the sage on the stage anymore. We have to be paying attention to our students' need. And that's going to depend on what it is that they bring to the classroom. And again, not with an expectation of to be told what to do, but rather realizing that they are really at the helm of their destiny. And higher education should reflect that. I mean, this is the last gateway when you think about it, you know, to adult life. I mean, if you're already not paying bills and not having your families to take care of, then that's what's going to happen pretty soon to you, pretty soon. So that's pretty much what's happening with our students, and as a result, realizing that you are the one who needs to be in charge of your own life is, I think, what needs to be permeating our institutions more, or at least the conversations around it. So again, this focus from course completion to learning, I think, becomes much more important than ever before.
But at the same time, um, it's important for our institutions to recognize the fact that not everybody belongs in research. Not everybody belongs in intellectual pursuits, even. I mean, there is a lot to be said for the craftsmen of the guilds. And I believe that there there had been a pendulum swing, and I will say pendulum swing a lot because I believe in these pendulum swinging. I've seen it in my lifetime. But I think that there was a pendulum swing to the idea that everybody should get a college education because that's the way you improve yourself. There are many ways to improve yourself. There are lots of entrepreneurs out there that have created wonderful things, and they are not college graduates. So we need to step away from this notion that college is the only fast track and embrace the idea that we are one of many solutions for people. Okay, I'm going to step back
Sounds
from
good.
that.
Sounds good. Yes, that's right. Yeah, we can talk about the individualization of instruction and focus to yes, yes, forever. And AI obviously brings many options. Thank you so much. Very. Thank you very much for that comment. So question number two: if higher education is perceived as outdated or disconnected from workforce reality, where specifically is that perception grounded in truth, and where is it overstated? What structural vulnerabilities are institutions not confronting honestly?
Now, this is the basis for a thesis. I mean, this is not something that we're going to spend 10 minutes on and dust off our hands and say, that's it, we've got the answer now. But I have to state that perception is reality. It really is. I come from many backgrounds, but one of my degrees is in business administration. And I focused on marketing because perception really is reality for most people. If they believe that colleges are outdated or disconnected from reality, then that's what they are going to act on. And we find that particularly in the political sphere these days because legislators are creating scenarios where they are dictating what's happening in our institutions. And a lot of the things that they're dictating make no sense. And I will say that, and if you disagree with me, that's fine. But in North Carolina, where I currently am, when I was the director of university accreditation, our legislators, passed a bill saying that North Carolina universities were no longer going to be allowed to maintain the same accreditor for more than one accreditation cycle, which makes no sense. Why have accreditation if you don't have accountability? And the only way you can have accountability is to compare from one cycle to the next whether or not you've improved. And if you're going to constantly change accreditors, there is no consistency. There's no opportunity to evaluate whether or not you met your standards. And once again, perception that we're not doing a good enough job on our own wound up becoming our reality, whether we wanted it or not, whether it made sense to us or not. So, when we talk about colleges being outdated, we have to look at the criticisms about grade inflation. The idea that, and I don't mean to pick on college athletes because I know a lot of really smart college athletes, but the idea that someone could be pushed through to get a college degree and they aren't capable of putting two sentences together, or they don't have good communication skills whether we're talking written or spoken. Um, the whole notion of grade inflation, when students start pushing back about the grades that they get, and instructors give up and just start giving everybody A's or everybody higher grades than they would have ordinarily. Those things tarnish the notion of what a college degree really means. Our reliance on formula-based education, trying to make sure that we have a level playing field for everyone, and so we're not going to recognize the high points or the low points. We're just going to go for what's in the middle. That homogenized kind of education also makes people doubt the true value of a college degree, and over-reliance on multiple choice assessments, for example, also takes away from the high points and the low points and homogenizes what it is we're trying to accomplish. So my premise is that universities really shouldn't try to be all things to all people. There is power in differentiation. And it's true that differentiation makes a difference in business, because any company that tries to be all things to all people is ultimately going to fail. It's true in higher education. Community colleges have a purpose. Research institutions have a purpose. But for some reason, community colleges have seen, research and higher level degrees as being status symbols that they need to aspire to. And as a result, they're morphing closer to what a university would traditionally offer. Similarly, research institutions are feeling as though they need to open their gates to more people in a way that is encouraging individuals who aren't necessarily research driven, but trying to make the research institution welcoming to individuals who, maybe don't need that level of expertise. Enrique, you have a question. Come on in.
Thank you. You captivated my sense of questioning here. How do you turn the power, especially at the community college level or in the individualized learning? How do you do that? And do you flip the institutions upside down?
Um, okay. Like I said, I'm a bit of a renegade. I've done it all from teaching to administration to fighting with government individuals nose to nose. And there is no one way to do it. It's not an easy situation to try to change the direction of the academic ship. And it's hard for the people who we see at the helms of our institutions. You'll notice that the number of years that presidents stay at a single institution is declining precipitously, because you get slings and arrows from all directions. The faculty aren't happy with you because things are changing. The legislators aren't happy with you because things aren't changing fast enough. The students aren't happy because they have their issues and needs and concerns. And the employers are pounding the table, insisting that you do certain things. It's almost a no-win situation if you're trying to be all things to all people. The key is determining what your institution stands for, making sure that everyone in the institution agrees that's what you stand for, and then being single-minded in your pursuit of that particular goal. That's not going to be popular. It's not going to be easy, but that's honestly what you have to do, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, have I beaten that half to death? Should we move on to the
You
next
certainly have. Thank
question?
you. Thank you so much. Um, well, let's move on to the rocket ship defense.
Okay, the
For those who argue that degrees remain the fastest path to mobility and opportunity, what evidence still supports that claim in the age of AI? And what must institutions do differently to ensure that narrative remains credible?
okay. I feel as though AI is almost a boogeyman at this point in time. It's something that we are using to scare people because AI is just a technology, just like, okay, it's not just like any other technology, but it isn't real. It's a tool that we use. And I have seen the weirdness of people marrying their AI entities. And I have seen the madness of instructors who refuse to acknowledge that AI exists and insist on keeping it out of their classrooms. Now, I say that's insanity simply because we have to recognize the fact that our students are going to go out into the world. And even before we give them their degree, they're currently in the world. A lot of our students, if not most of them, are working to some degree. And even when they're not working, they have their own free time where they are interfacing with various technologies. If we are not teaching them, they're learning on their own, or someone else is teaching them. So if we try to put our heads in the sand and ignore the fact that AI exists for our students, then we are giving away our opportunity to make sure that they are getting the best chance of being empowered by this new technology. However, the reason a lot of instructors are putting their heads in the sand and ignoring AI is because they haven't been trained. And that is a failing of our institutions, as far as I'm concerned. Institutions are very good at producing policies, but they're not that good at training our own individuals internally. We we talk about lifelong learning, but we don't necessarily translate that notion that we advocate for our students into action for our educators and our administrators. They're left to try to band together on their own, to figure it out on their own, instead of being given training programs that can help them understand how to better use the technology. So, getting back to the rocket ship defense, if our degrees are in fact the fastest path to mobility, we need to equip our students with every tool that is available because there is no employer that's going to lock them in a room and say, you're not allowed to access the internet, you're not allowed to have AI, and we are not going to let you talk to anybody else. You've got to figure this out on your own. We do that in the classroom, but that's not the way the workplace happens. Bo, you've got a question.
Yeah. So I kind of have two questions here for you.
Okay,
Based
great.
on what you were saying there, do you feel then that the faculty members who are going to see the most success in their instruction and then in turn, their students, be the most successful in translating what they learn in these classrooms, are going to be the individuals who are the most curious in exploring the potential opportunities that this technology provides. And then the second question, sorry, I'm going to throw this one out at you as well. Do you have any like tangible examples of any higher education programs who have done an exceptional job of supporting their faculty members in building their capacity and knowledge in use of artificial intelligence?
Okay.
Sorry.
Could you state the first question one more time?
Yeah, totally. Do you feel as though the faculty members, because of what you said, that the majority of the higher education institutions that are out there, they haven't done traditionally a great job of supporting their faculty in developing these skills intentionally? So are the ones who are going to be the most successful, are those going to be the individuals who are the most curious and who go out there and learn the power of these tools themselves, and then in turn translate that into opportunities to share that knowledge with their students?
Okay. What resonated with me the most there was the word curiosity. When did we become so afraid as educators that we lost that thirst, that curiosity, that thirst for wisdom and knowledge and understanding that drives higher education? You're absolutely right. It is the people who stay curious and want to understand rather than the ones who are fearful and give way to that fear. We have to be courageous as educators, and we have to be at the forefront of knowledge. Otherwise, why are our students having faith in us? If we can't lead them forward, then we're not doing our job effectively. However, we do need to understand. And in the second question, I believe you asked, which institutions have done a good job of helping their educators get to that point. I know for a fact that Louisiana, no, I think it was Tulane University in Louisiana has brought in a program that is based on the textbook Ingrain AI. The author of that book, John, he is a friend of mine, and I really enjoy the way he has created a system of education about AI that helps people not just understand it, but be able to take it as a tool and run with it. Once you get the basics and understand how to utilize the tool, then you are in a position to help others utilize the tool, including colleagues as well as students. Now, that's an example on the teaching side. My company that I had created looked specifically at administration. And I have examples of administrators who've gone through my training, and they in turn have turned around and created all kinds of applications that are based on AI that have improved their way of learning. I'm not turning this into a commercial for anyone, but it is important for groups of colleagues to get together and make sure that they help each other. One of the first people that I interviewed on my podcast coined a term that was the cone of shame. And he said that There are too many people in academia who see turning to AI as a way of saying, I can't do my own work, or I'm not intelligent enough to be able to do my own work. And so there's this cone of shame associated with having an AI collaboration. And as long as that cone of shame is in place, we're not going to be able to fully embrace and utilize and take advantage of this new technology. So, a lot of it comes from the top until the people at the top say, you can go ahead and do this. You have our permission. In fact, you've got more than our permission. Here are the resources that you need to become educated in this field. We're going to be at a standstill and we're going to still be hiding under these cones of shame. And that is wrong. It's a disservice to our students and it's a disservice to everyone in our institutions. It's keeping our institutions from accelerating like rocket ships.
That's right, and I think
Did
that
I?
these growing pains when it comes to the adoption of any technology. I mean, there's like a few weeks ago, I even brought up a flyer, a picture of teachers protesting back in 1980s against the use of calculators in math classes. So I think that that's that.
I
With
was there.
AI, there's another part of shame is this, that every time you ask a question, there's a bottle of water going out the window. And I'm thinking, okay, look at what else is happening there that pollutes our environment. And we are just kind of like, no, 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 that's matter of factly, that's how we live, right? But all of a sudden, when it comes to AI, probably the most powerful technology, that has ever been given to mankind, humankind. And we are made to feel guilty about using it. I couldn't agree more with those comments. If you don't mind, JD, there's a couple of people who would like to speak, and
Oh,
I
yeah,
just
absolutely.
realized that Giselle, I think if you could please, would you like to talk about your comments you made in the chat, Giselle Caballero?
Yeah, basically, I'm thinking about the subject of curiosity in context with the subject here, and I think like the structure of grading, the way that it is now, and the grading inflation and all that sort of diminishes the opportunity for curiosity, not just in faculty, but also in students, because the incentive is to get good grades, not to be curious and expand your mind and learn more about the world or even yourself.
It's so true. And it's heartbreaking because when we have babies, we don't expect them to instantly be able to walk. We know they're going to fall. We know they're going to stumble. We know that it's a process. But for some reason, we're not allowing our students the same opportunity to explore and fail along the way because that's part of the learning process. And if you take that away, are they really learning or are they just parroting? I'm with you, Giselle.
That's the notion of care, taking responsibility for people we serve. I could not agree more with this. This is just absolutely a fantastic comment, JD. This is something that you're right. In the spirit of accountability and getting it done and make sure that making sure that our students complete courses and fulfill our requirements, we where is the human being behind it, right? What is it? To what extent do we actually meet students' needs or we address what they need? And I think that the baby analogy is just absolutely perfect here. When the child falls down, we are there to pick them up. We don't tell them, here's your B plus. That's the best we can do this time. So thank you so much for pointing this out. And I have one more person who would like to speak. Andrea, if you could please speak up and make your comments heard.
Sure. A couple of things, and I'll make that really brief. First, I think in order for higher education to really move forward, we really need to have a new agreement about authorship. I think many of us who have, I mean, I've been in education, higher education now for almost 30 years, and that point of authorship, what is mine, what is yours, the idea of plagiarism, all of those concepts need to be rethought, need to be a new way of thinking about what is authorship. And that is connected to our students, because our students, you know, another thing that we may not realize is that idea of equity, of this is the first tool that changes with you. So it's not just us teaching them how to use the tool, it's the tool learning them. And that connection, that relationship, whatever you want to call it, that collaboration with this tool gets faster and better and more nuanced as time goes by. And the longer we wait, we're going to see the difference between students who know how to do this and students who don't. And finally, that brings us to the idea of the mixed messages that we give to students. The more we have faculty members who are saying, I don't want to touch it, I don't want to learn it, I'm so against it, it gives this message to students, oh, you know what, it's cheating if I do it. And I've been an English instructor for those 30 years. And let me tell you, I am now doing my class with AI-assisted learning, AI-assisted writing. And the first 4 weeks of last semester, I literally spent scaffolding the idea that using an AI tool is not cheating. There are ways that are inappropriate. There are ways that are, you know, that are not representative of what we want to do in higher education, but it's not cheating. And moving students away from that, they're getting those mixed signals, and that's causing even more of a delay. Thank you.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea, for your comments. Shall we move to question 4?
Let's do it.
All right, then. The total eclipse fear. The most disruptive narrative suggests AI is replacing thinking itself, right? You just spoke to this. From your perspective, what forms of thinking or performance are genuinely vulnerable to automation, and what forms remain distinctly human and accessible?
Okay. This really does dovetail off of what Andrea was saying, because it is a technology that evolves. It is not a hammer. A hammer is going to be a hammer. It's not going to change. You're not going to come back tomorrow and it will be doing something different than hammering. But with AI, it does evolve and change, in part because the information that it's based on continues to change with each new generation of GPT that's developed. But at the same time, it is not something that it's not autonomous yet. It may be someday. And I chuckle because I watched for the third time the movie AI from 2001, the Steven Spielberg movie, which was a little boy robot that looked really, really real and he could love. And that was what set him apart from all the other machines. It's interesting. We haven't reached that stage yet, but rewatching that movie brings up all of those concerns and fears and questions of morality when we're talking about a sentient machine. So at this point, it still requires us to ask the question. It requires us to, create the framework and try to set the stage for what it should be answering. So at this point, it's not really replacing thinking itself. However, if our grading system as educators is based on getting the right answer, that's not thinking. It wasn't thinking before the age of AI, and it's not thinking after the age of AI. What we should be teaching our students is how to come to the right answer. And part of that has always been about collaborating with colleagues. We force our students sometimes to be in group projects. Not because group projects are fun. I always hated them. But because we know that in the work situation, they're going to have to collaborate and they have to understand those social skills and they have to be able to do the give and take and they have to be able to take the slings and arrows of other people saying, no, I don't like your idea. I think your idea is wrong, and this is why. If we frame our interactions, our academic interactions with AI from the standpoint of a colleague that you're debating with, instead of an encyclopedia that you're pulling off a shelf and finding the answer, then we get back to the true nature of education. And I think that's what's missing. And what Andrea pointed out is an issue in our classrooms if we fall away from that curiosity aspect and that collaborative aspect and just think in terms of what's the right answer. Any thoughts on that? Because I'm tired of hearing myself talk.
So Giselle has a comment on in similar vein. Giselle, would you like to speak up?
Sure, yeah. So basically, I'm reminded that, so I'm a graduate student right now. I'm a master's in social work student. And even,
Congratulations.
thank you. Um, and it's interesting to see in my classmates that they have such a fear of failure, even at this level. Especially since, so my program has no exams.
Mm.
And so the assessment of our work and our learning is so it it's really diverse and individualized the way that it usually goes for our assignments and things like that. There's a lot of group work as well, and we have our practicum and stuff like that. So I'm consistently surprised by how much anxiety I notice in my classmates. And personally, for me, like my own history is that my undergraduate GPA was 2.24. And so to be in a graduate program is like really, really foreign to me and something that I thought was never going to be accessible for me. And so I'm doing very well in my program now. And it's it's just like a it's like I would rather put my transcript from my undergraduate degree on my wall than my degree. And like that failure itself taught me so much. And so in my mind, it's sort of been a lesson in the value of curiosity and messing it up and learning from that is invaluable. I wouldn't change that at all.
I hear you and I agree. Well done, my dear.
Excellent. Thank you so
Enrique.
much.
Great question.
Go ahead, Enrique.
So why do we focus on grades instead of just what do we focus on so much on grades instead of just I'm gonna say it. Focus on the skills and competencies. I mean,
Okay.
let's be honest here. Let's be honest. So why, uh, Giselle, I mean, you spoke from your heart. Come on, this is a great example.
Okay. You have said something that is very close to my heart. It's one of the reasons why I'm with Western Governors University now. They are strictly a competency-based program. Institution, sorry. All of their programs are competency-based. If someone goes into a particular course and they already know the background information, let's say it's an accountant who has 20 years of accounting but never went to college, but they've got lots of experience. Forcing that person to sit in a classroom and learn Accounting 101 is absurd. So if they can go into Accounting 101 and show that they're competent with the information that would have been taught to them by going through the assessment and showing their competency, I've always felt that that individual should be allowed to get credit for that particular course. That's something that I've always felt. However, we get into the issues of the economics of running an institution. And part of the economics of running an institution is making sure that we get a certain number of dollars from individuals and the accreditation requirements of certain numbers of hours of people sitting in a particular course. Western Governors is an accredited institution. Their accreditor accepts their skills and competency output and does not require the students to spend a certain number of hours in each course. And that provides a level of differential thinking that I find really refreshing. Also, Western Governors Institution is very keen on helping students understand how to use AI. But I have to admit that there has been some pushback in ways that I didn't expect with respect to AI. Evidently, there are individuals who have religious concerns regarding AI. And there are certain religions that view AI as an abomination. And that is an entirely different group of constraints that I'm not entirely sure how to deal with. I don't want to go against anyone's teachings. I don't want to go against anyone's culture. But at the same time, if you're going to be successful in today's workplace, it's going to be difficult for those individuals to be as useful and as helpful as they could be without the technological tools that their colleagues and the people who are competing for their jobs will have at hand.
So, Dr. Mosley, are we saying that so economics are of the institution is more important than the students as us and learning?
Without the economics, the institution can't exist. So it's a chicken and egg situation. The students are vitally important, but they're not the only ones that are footing the bill. And we're seeing that more and more in a lot of the legislation that's coming down the pipe. So, is AI creating a total eclipse of universities as we know them? No, I don't think it's just AI. I think that there is a lot that's going on there. Okay, are we moving on to the next question?
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and do that. Thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
the discussion. Implications for student learning outcomes and assessment, and that's topic that's very very dear to all of us here. If these three narratives are competing for legitimacy, what does that mean for how institutions define and measure student learning outcomes? How should assessment practices evolve to demonstrate that learning is still meaningful, measurable, and valuable in the AI saturated environment?
First, we have to agree on what is important. Is the right answer important, or is the search for the right answer important? And I would be willing to stake my academic career on the fact that the right answer is immaterial because the right answer keeps changing as time and technology moves on. What's vitally important is our students' ability to discern how to get to the right answer. And even though AI can lay out some mileposts or guidelines for searching for the right answer, it's still up to the individual to embark on the actual search. AI can provide information, but information in and of itself is just data. It's not wisdom. It's not application. It's not collaboration. It's not uh, debate. And all of these are things that very often we have lost in our classrooms in search of making sure that everyone is getting exactly the same instruction and everyone is coming to exactly the same right answer. When we're talking about the three narratives, it's my opinion that all three narratives are in place in every institution. And the degree to which people believe in the three narratives varies from institution to institution. But there is no perfect institution. I do believe, though, that by looking beyond the right answer and looking at skills and competencies, we're getting closer to what we should be measuring as we move forward in higher education. That's my 2 cents.
And Great Western University is probably moving, not only moving in the right direction, I think they're ahead of many of us. So that's what that is. I think you started speaking to this. I'm really looking forward to the discussion of what learning really means, right? What how do we keep ourselves accountable? Because that's why we have those Friday SLO talks. You know, again, speaking frankly here, right?
Mhm.
We would like to make sure that our students learn things as a result of instruction, that they not only complete
Yes.
courses, but that they leave with certain skills and competencies. And the question is that has always been raised in these meetings for a number of years now, is that okay? How do we make learning reimbursable, right? How can it generate apportionment? How can it generate funding? And until we figure out that question out, there's always going to be this friction between business and student need,
Mhm.
as Enrique pointed out
Mhm.
in his question. So thank you so much
Mhm.
for those comments. Any other questions from the audience? Could we move to question number 7? That's going to be
Number
our
6.
oh, 6 number. Sorry. Institutional trajectories. Looking ahead 5 to 10 years, what institutional behaviors will distinguish colleges that adapt effectively from those that decline? What signals should faculty and assessment leaders be watching for now?
Okay. When it comes to crystal ball gazing, I really dislike trying to pick winners and losers because it is my belief, and this is just my belief, that institutions that are healthy are going to find ways to survive. They will adapt, just like any other organism in our environment. The ones that are healthy will find ways to adapt. The ones that are not healthy probably should not continue to exist. And I know that's a horrible thing to say, but it's true. It is a survival of the fittest situation. Now, what we as a nation decide is knowledge that should be funded may be a very different conclusion than what individual communities feel is important to be funded. There are cultural aspects that need to be preserved and embraced that are not dealt with in college settings. That's fine. They can be taught in another venue. There are intellectual pursuits that aren't necessarily being embraced within colleges, and that's fine. There are other ways to go after intellectual opportunities. These webinars, these talks that you have are examples of those. So there are venues for doing things that we as people feel are important, but they may not be the same venues or the same topics that our institutions of higher education have to embrace. We have to be mindful of the public good. And when we're talking about the public good, that goes further than just what JD thinks is important, or Yarrick thinks is important, or Enrique thinks is important. So if we're looking at the employers, for example, they may need a workforce that is skilled in the use of AI. Or other employers who are running factories could care less whether or not their employees are skilled in AI. But if those employers feel that what they're getting from universities is lacking, they're going to find other ways of gaining the workers that they need. So in Silicon Valley, a lot of the companies have their own internal training programs, or they've decided that college degrees aren't necessary. And as long as you have certain certifications, that's fine. We'll bring you on. But what they found almost unilaterally is when they bring on people who have certifications but don't have those refined skills that you learn in college, the ability to collaborate, the ability to discuss things and try to come to a gestalt that is greater than something that you could have done on your own. They find that those individuals just aren't really making the grade. So I don't think that it's a matter of saying, okay, all colleges have to embrace AI and that's the end of it. Because if you have a community college system that is focused on the trades, AI has a role in that, but maybe not at that particular level. Maybe it's something that needs to be looked at when somebody goes through a teacher education program and needs to understand, how do I help my students understand better what's going on? Okay, I've probably rambled a bit too far. Bo, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, just based off of what you just said there, do you view the I guess the mission then for higher education to be shifting from knowledge transfer to transferable skills delivery, and being a model for that now as well?
Frankly, that happened back in the 1980s when the college professors were complaining about calculators in the classroom. And I was in engineering school and started off with the slide rule. It wasn't until my senior year that we got calculators. So I went through that transition and I know how painful that was and how instructors even at the grade school level, we're saying kids aren't going to know how to do arithmetic and it's going to be a horrible thing. Well, Yeah, kids don't know how to do arithmetic, but it's not so horrible because the cash registers can figure out the change. Of course, I find it amusing when there is a total of $1.18 and I hand $1.25 to someone and no, hold on. I hand a quarter, 3 pennies, and $1 to an individual behind the cash register, and they don't know what to do with that. They don't know to give me back a dime and that I'm just trying to get rid of some of my change. So it's an interesting situation, but it is about the pursuit of knowledge if we're talking about higher education. The search for the right answer went away a long time ago. It went away with the calculator. It went away with the internet. It went away with the World Wide Web. It's being deteriorated even further with AI. But uh, this is a situation that we have to come to grips with. And we should have done it a long time ago. Now we're being forced to. Other questions?
Wow, with that, this is just a perfect quote, to end our conversation. Oh gosh, this is very very insightful. So thank you so much. Let me see here. Anyone else who would like to make any final comments, questions? Andrea, please do speak.
I was just talking, I use my example when I talk to professors about using AI, I use spell check. And my father was a lawyer, he hated spell check. And we do have data that shows, hey, if you look up a word on the dictionary and you use it 3 times in a sentence, you will get the word. And the idea is my father's like, oh, you can't think without words. Therefore, this whole world is gonna end because we have spell check. And here's the thing, we all have spell check now. No one in their email says, I use spell check to use this. Everyone just assumes that you use it. And yet there is an expectation that you use it correctly. You can have a completely spelled correctly on a piece of paper that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There's an assumption that you use it correctly. And I think in terms of AI, there's going to be an assumption that you know how to use it correctly.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Andrea. And one of the things that I always pointed out to my business communication students, just because spell check didn't catch it doesn't mean it's not misspelled. Because if I type in SHIP instead of SHOP, that's a spelling error in the context of the sentence, even though it's not a spelling error according to spell check. So I'm with you 100% on that.
I do have a question though, really fast. My question is, yes, we lose the ability to spell. Yes, we may lose the ability to count in our heads. What skills do you think that we can afford to lose with AI and still be a successful society?
That once again goes back to this notion of adaptation. There are skills that I hold dear. Like I said, business communication. I'm a stickler for people who use poor grammar being looked at differently, even though they shouldn't be. They may have a brilliant idea, but if they can't communicate it well, they're going to be thought less of. And that's wrong. And I know it's wrong. But once again, perception equals reality. So when you ask what skills can we afford to lose, I honestly believe that there are skills that we think now are essential, that through adaptation and becoming more comfortable with the technology, we're going to shrug about later on. So I don't think that it's a matter of identifying particular skills that we have to hold on to for dear life. I think it's a matter of paying attention to what makes us human and what we uniquely bring to the table. Enrique?
Yes, I'm thinking this very hardly how to say this. So what do you say to the English instructors? I mean, think about it, right? That's first question. And then second, what's going to happen to the ESL instructors with AI?
Okay. The first question, IR1, like I said, I taught business communication, dotting I's, crossing T's, making sure you use the right word, blah, blah, blah. The glorious thing about AI is that it's actually leveling that playing field. So now we're not just worried about whether or not spell check catches the word. Now we have an assistant that does what secretaries used to do. There are a ton of businessmen who couldn't put together two sentences to save their lives, but because they had secretaries in place, those secretaries were expected to massage what they were saying so that it was presentable to the rest of the world. Speechwriters are in place for politicians who can't put together two sentences to make themselves look good. We have always had these people in place to help us look better than we can make ourselves look better. AI is now bringing that capability to individuals who may not have been able to afford to have a speechwriter or a secretary or a hairdresser or whatever to make them look better in many different ways. Now, what do I say to the English teachers? This is a new tool. This is a new day and age. We have to figure out how to help our students succeed. Simply having AI does not mean they're going to be great writers. We have to help them be critical thinkers along the way. So if AI pumped out something, what would make it better? How can you make it your own? How do you put your own flourish on something that has been created by a machine? That's the challenge for English teachers. ESL or ELO, ESL. ESL instructors, to be honest, translation bots are very, very good. However, you're not going to sit there with your in-laws and converse with them through a bot. There are some basic things that are better done without technology in the middle. When you are trying to convey your thoughts, your opinions, the things that matter to you, if you have to constantly do it through a mechanism, you're going to lose something along the way. So I don't think that we are saying that it is the end of the road for entire classes of people. I do believe that things are changing and that we have to adapt accordingly. Hope that answered your question.
And the reason I say that, yes, and the reason I
Mhm.
say that is because uh, there's the notion that, oh, there goes the ESL instructors, they're gone, right? Right. That's the notion. The second notion is that I speak different languages, right? So how do I
Mhm.
capture? I might not be able to articulate this rationale, but through my other language, I am fluent. I am proficient.
I hear
So
you. I absolutely.
how do you capture the autonomy? You know? So
Okay, that's beyond my pay grade. I'm an ugly American. I speak one language. And it's one of those perplexing things about communication in general. Because you're absolutely right. It is such a valuable construct that you can converse in more languages than I can. But it's also a unique opportunity for me to be able to put my thoughts through a language bot and be seen to be communicating in my same heartfelt way in a language that I do not speak naturally. So it's a give and take. Nobody's going to be completely displaced. We just have to figure out new ways to use these new tools. There are still people who do woodworking with great love and great skill, but it's not the norm. And we have to accept that the norms are changing. Bo, you have a question?
Yeah. So on the same topic here, my wife, she grew up as a ESL student in the United Kingdom. Actually, her family was from Pakistan, and a lot of times these students in here in the United States, at least, that are ESL students, they're one of our most vulnerable populations.
Yes.
So while we're talking about the opportunity that artificial intelligence has in leveling the playing field by creating these different opportunities for our students, a lot of times those students come from backgrounds where they don't have the same type of scaffolding provided to them in order to maybe gain access to some of these tools, or even the families might not be self-directed enough to guide them to use them in the ways that they're intended to be used. So what's the answer for creating I guess a framework around a population such as our ESL learners, where they can be empowered intentionally to use these tools and be afforded those opportunities to actually level that playing field?
One of the beautiful things about our current technological opportunities is that it can bring together people from diverse backgrounds in a single venue, which isn't a physical venue, but is a virtual venue where ideas can be shared, where tips can be shared that aren't necessarily tips and ideas that need to be shared with a broader population that we might find in our classrooms. I would say that being able to leverage a community of ESL students who can exchange with each other different tips about, well, if you use this particular online tool, you'll be able to get these benefits that aren't available with other online tools, because there are so many tools and so much technology that's out there. It takes a village to be able to sort through it all and figure out what's going to be best for any one group of people. So what I say is students that are ESL students, they need to band together. Students who are from minority backgrounds, they need to band together. They don't necessarily have to do it in a physical space because that's expensive and it's time consuming. And we have the technology now to be able to band together to support each other in unique ways that we've never had before.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's right. And with that, I will go ahead and share JD's information. Thank you very much. This was very, very, very insightful discussion. Thank you very much for spending with us the morning, Friday morning with us, or early afternoon. And I'm sure that, considering the topics that you've discovered, you gave us, a lot of food for thought, as they say. We'll see what happens. This is the topic that's only evolving, and I think it's just I think you alluded to this, that it's just the evolution is just as fast as it can possibly get. It's very difficult at times to put a pause on it and ponder and think about what it is that's happening around us. So thank you very much again for your time, for your expertise. I'm sure we're going to stay in touch, and there's just more to come.
That sounds great. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the audience for the wonderful questions. And if I can ever be of service, just let me know. I'm always
Sounds
happy to help.